Thank, thank you, Antoinette, for that introduction. Salams to everyone who is here today, and thank you for taking the time to be here with us today for today's training. Um, my name is Sukaina Manji. I'm a senior examiner. I'm a teacher for many years, so like yourself, I also feel the pressures of teaching and want to develop ourselves as well. So I've been a trainer for Pearson for quite some time. I've delivered a lot of training for them. So for today, you are here for this training, which will get you ready to teach the International GCSE Islamic Studies, Module 1. And as we go along, you also have your documents, which you should be able to download under the resources tab. Antoinette has assured me they are there. So if you haven't managed to get to the documents, please look through the tab which says resources, document, and you should see all your documents there. Hopefully, you've also managed to get them either through the link that was sent earlier to you as well. Thank you. And right, so moving forward for today, our our plan is to start off by looking at the aims and objectives of the specification, understanding the specification, and we'll also introduce the assessment and how to teach the specification, any support and resources, and I'll also take any final questions from you, and hopefully after a good 2 hours, we'll finish off. In the meantime, whilst I'm talking, if anybody has any burning questions, as Antoinette has already told you, please do put them into the chat box and I'll pick them up as soon as I can. And Antoinette will also be looking behind the screen to see if there's anything that needs to be dealt with urgently. In terms of any technical problems, please just chat to Antoinette and she'll help you with that. Thank you. So for today's training, the aim is to identify how the qualification has been devised and what are the fundamental documentation that can help you in your teaching. We'll review the content of the qualification. We'll also explore how to plan the course or how to plan the lessons and understand the assessment of the qualification so that you are better able to prepare your students. And in terms of identifying support that's there from Pearson, remember there's always support there for you from Pearson. If you are looking to look at understanding exemplar questions and mark schemes, that's to come in Module 2, hopefully. So after today, I'll see you again next week for Module 2 as well. So before we move forward, I can see some names are very new to me as I see them here. I'd like you to think about these 4 questions and rather than asking you to discuss, what we'll do is if you can very quickly into the chat at the same time put the responses for the 4 questions. So the first question is, did you teach the previous specification? So we are talking about the specification before this was actually brought up. And are you an NQT? NQT meaning newly qualified teacher, or have you taught for many years? And which country do you teach? And how many students do you teach? Be interesting to hear about your experiences here. So if I could please request you to put your responses within chat. Thank you very much. So looking at Shuaib's response, you're currently teaching the specification, so I'm presuming you haven't taught the previous one. Right, Faiza teaching for 10 years in Fujairah, yeah. That's good. So you have your teaching skills that you can actually bring into the specification whilst you're teaching this specification to the students. Thank you. Nadia, 12 years, that's good. In Pakistan, 150 students. I hope you're not teaching all 150 at the same time. How big are your classes? Faiza, how big are your classes as well? Right, Shuaib teaching in Pakistan as well, and 10 years, good. So again, okay, Nadia 24 in each class, so that's a good size. Babar Ali, right, 140, 30 students in each class, okay. Um, so you're new to Pearson, okay, good. So previously, I suppose you've taught the Cambridge specifications. Right, Faiza 20, okay, good. Right. Okay. So two people have taught the Cambridge specification before, and yeah. Okay. Amna, since 2019, you've taught Edexcel Pearson 1. Okay. Rosima, you have more than 50 students. Okay, right. Good. Okay. Your classes are at least 5 to 15 students. Yeah. Good. Right, that's quite a lot of wealth in there. You can see most of you have got a lot of experience in teaching, and in terms of class-wise, we can see it varies. So some of you have got smaller classes, some have got bigger classes. Okay, Egypt, Muhammad Al Sayed from Egypt. So far we have people from Pakistan, Egypt, and UAE. Good. So we can see how this training is worldwide, and hopefully it will benefit you and make you even more efficient in your classrooms as well, because you'll be supporting your students to move forward with their work as well. So thank you for introducing yourselves here. So we'll move forward. And as I said, please do keep any comments that you want to send through the chat or any questions, and I'll pick them from time to time. So we'll start off by looking at what Pearson does. Basically, Pearson is the world's leading learning company, and within the UK, it is the largest awarding organization and provides qualifications which is aligned to the British educational system. It is trusted and recognized, partnering to 6,500 schools, colleges, and employers. So you can see how efficient Pearson is with the work that it's doing. Marked 10 million exam scripts on behalf of the Department of Education each year. And again, if we look at worldwide, how they operate in 70 countries in worldwide, we can see already 3 countries are represented here today. So again, the slides are with you as well, so you can read further at your own time if you are interested in more here. So let's start by understanding the specification. So on the Pearson site, there are a number of essential and helpful documents. So you'll find the specification itself there, the sample assessment material there, the past examination papers, and principal examiner reports, teaching and learning materials as well. What you need to understand is that there's no textbook for this specification, but there is really useful resource which has been tailored to help you teach within the classroom. The learning materials are special focused towards delivering this qualification. Again, these are all through the website. Now, what you might find that in if you have a copy of the slides, the link on that slide will not be working, but this new link is working. So I'll thank you. Yes, yeah. So the correct link has already, I'll just try and see if I can open it very quickly, and we can look at it. I'm not sure if you can see my screen. Can somebody just tell me a yes if you can see my screen with the link? Okay, so the link is here and I will put it into the chat later on as well so that you can have a look yourselves as well. Thank you, Babar and Nadia. Thank you, Rasima. So if you look through the link, you will see there is all these different places that you can hyperlink on. And for example, specification will be the sample assessment and teaching and learning materials. If you look at this one, you'll find different tabs that open up and you'll be able to have a look at it. Exemplar material, again, you'll be able to look at it. So I'm not going to open the tabs now. I'll just leave them for now and we'll go back to our slides. And then later on, when we have a moment, I'll open up the link so we can study it really well. Okay, so one of the key things that there's no demand for candidates to be able to read or translate text in Arabic. Now, if you were teaching the old specification, you might remember there would be questions there for students to actually translate sections from the Quran or Hadith. In this specification, there is no demand. You will find that within the new format to the questions, again, we'll discuss this as we do it next week, where there is the Arabic text and there is the English text already given to the students. So they don't need to actually translate it or they don't need the ability to read Arabic. There's a new section on living the Muslim life. Demand for evaluation skills in the longer D questions. Now, this is the key thing. The D questions need a lot of evaluation skills. So your job becomes even harder in the classroom because you have to support your students to actually be able to analyze and explain more their responses. Again, we'll discuss this more fully in module 2. And requirement to integrate an understanding of the text. So in the D questions where the text is already given, the student is actually required to actually integrate it into their responses. So this is important for the students to sort of remember and as you're teaching them. In terms of the specification itself, it's divided into 3 sections. So the first section A being the life and teachings and achievements of Prophet Muhammad. Section B, where you have the key beliefs, practices, and features of the early Muslim community founded by the Prophet. And finally, section C, which is the new section, living the Muslim life today. So there will be examples later on which we will look at. One thing to remember is questions will not be asked on topics that do not appear in the fuller breakdown of the content. So if you look at the content itself, within each section, there are topics that you are going to be teaching your students. So there'll be no questions which will be away from those topics. All questions will be based on whatever topics are appearing within the content itself. In section A, the life and teachings and achievements of Prophet Muhammad. Here, students need to know historical facts. So, for example, what they need to know is any achievements and about his life, the significance of his life and achievements in the development of Islam. So opposition of what Prophet Muhammad had faced any opposition and ultimate need for hijrah. So we are talking about the migration from Mecca to Medina. Again, this is broken down to include the events and their significance and the roles played by named individuals and groups. For example, the Ansar, what role did they play? Again, if people here have taught the previous specification, you might see some lending towards that. If you haven't taught the previous specification, again, this is just a quick understanding that in the previous specification, there was a lot on this. In this specification, there's a section which is dedicated to that. Yeah, I have a question somewhere. Okay, thank you. So thank you, Antoinette. Babar's audio might be on his side. Yes, thank you. So 2017. So this is the 2017 specification. Okay. Right. So we'll move on to the next slide, where we now move on to section B. Now here in section B, there is the belief in the importance of Prophet Muhammad. So again, what we look at is the key beliefs, the practices, and the features of the early Muslim community founded by the Prophet. So we start off by the Prophet himself, and then we move on to section B, where we are looking at the early Muslim community, which was founded by the Prophet. Here, these include some named prophets as well, and also students will need to know about the role and importance of those named prophets. Again, some similarity to the old specification, but not very heavy content. It is a section of it. If you look at the section, students will need to know historical facts about the beliefs and practices of the early Muslim community. So when we talk about historical facts, we're looking at what happened, how it happened, and significance of these beliefs and practices in the development of Islam. So basically looking at how Islam was developed, where Prophet Muhammad has actually founded the community at the time, and how Islam has developed. So moving on to section C. This is the new section. Now, this has never appeared in the old specification. An example of the fuller spec content on the topic in section C could be the practice of Hajj. So where we look at students need to know how Muslims express their religion on their day-to-day lives, understand the obligations Islam places on Muslims today. So obligation of doing the Hajj if you're able to afford it, where again, when we look at Hajj, it is how is it performed, the importance of pilgrimage, challenges and benefits for those who are attending Hajj. So I'll just give you 10 minutes to look at the specification itself. Here we have a focus on page 9 to 15. So if you can turn to pages 9 to 15, and then I'll walk through with that. Nine to 15, have a look through the content itself, and if you have any questions that you need to ask, please put them through. I'll put, if anybody wants to ask a question at this point, you can put your video on and your audio on so that I can hear you and see you, or you can always put it onto chat as well. On pages 9 to 15, please, so that you can actually just have a look at the specification itself very quickly. All the three sections that are there that we've just discussed, and then there is further information about the assessment. We'll discuss that again later on. Section A, you can see the topics that are there. So you have in each section, you'll find that there will be 9 topics, and each of these topics have been divided well for you so that you can teach them well accordingly in the classroom. Later on, when we have a look at the link, you'll get an example of a lesson plan as well. So if you look at, for example, the topic on personal aspects of the Prophet's life, we start looking at the Prophet's ancestry and his early years from birth to parenthood. And we look at revelation of the Quran, where the events of the night of power is discussed, and these all continue forward. And then you can see the last topic, 1.9, talks about Prophet's final pilgrimage and his sermon. And then we move on to section B, which is the key beliefs. So we are looking at the Muslim community now. Here we start off by looking at the nature and belief of Allah. So we start looking at Tawheed and the attributes of Allah in terms of His power and how Allah is the creator, how He is merciful and just. We look at Risala, and this is where they need to know the names of different prophets. So Prophet Adam, Abraham, Prophet Ismail, Prophet Musa, Prophet Dawood, Prophet Isa. We also then look at the holy books. So we look at Taurat, Zabur, Injil, and the scrolls of Abraham, and how these books were important in establishing Islam. And a lot you can see further topics broken down again. If you go on to 2.9, the last topic, the leadership of Islam following the death of the Prophet, and the importance of the period during that time for the Muslim community. Move on to section C, which is a new topic. Here we look at the Muslim life today. And in that, we start looking at how the nature and role of Shahada is important, how it is used in practice. We look at the different actions that are obligations on a Muslim. So, for example, we look at Salah, how is it performed? We look at Saum, which is, we'd look at the significance of it and who is exempted from it. We look at Zakat, Hajj, Jihad. Again, if we talk about jihad, we're also talking about the inner jihad, which is the greater jihad, and the lesser jihad, which is the outer jihad. And again, moving on, and you look at the Muslim family, community, and citizenship. So very quickly, we've just looked at broken down topics there. And in terms of details and topics, you try and focus on as much depth you can. You don't want them to go very much deep into it, as long as you're connecting it back to the topics there are there. So later on, as I said, when I show you the different teaching materials, it might give you an indication how much you can go further with it. Okay, so I'll stop sharing this section now, and I'll go back to my slides, and I hope you've had an opportunity to look at the document as well. Remember, this is your document. You can look at it again in your own time, and I'll start sharing the PowerPoint again. Okay, so we'll move on to the next section, which is introducing the assessment. So again, there'll be more on how to do the mark scheme and various things related to that in module 2. So if we look at the demands of the question paper itself, there is a choice in section A and B. So for section A and B, students have to do a complete whole question. So for example, a student might use question 1, and they would have to cover all the different 4 parts within it. What you need to understand is that there's only one paper, and the time allocation is 2 hours, 30 minutes. So time has been given out properly for the student to be able to finish off their exam paper. In terms of the choices, make sure that you are explaining to your students that when they are choosing a question, they need to finish the whole question. So all 4 parts of it need to be done. So for example, if a student was choosing question 2, that had to do A, B, C, D, rather than doing 1A, go back to 2B, then do 1C, go back to 2D. They can't do that. They need to be consistent in their choice. In section B as well, if they are choosing question 3, they need to finish off the whole of question 3, or if they're doing question 4, they need to finish off the whole of question 4. In section C, there is no choice. This is the reason being that we are giving prominence to this section. So we are stressing the importance of developing an understanding of how the Muslim life is lived today. So where we start off by understanding the Prophet's life, understanding the community at the Prophet's time, and then how the Muslims are living today. Within this section, both question 5 and 6 need to be answered. There is no choice in this. All 4 sections of section 5 of question 5 need to be answered. All 4 sections of question 6 need to be responded as well. So it's important that students are getting that understanding very quickly. So when you are teaching in your classroom, try and bring up an exam paper as a way of for them to get used to the question papers as well. Yeah. So in terms of the exam paper, as I've already mentioned, there are 4 parts in it. So A, B, C, D. Each of them assess one or more assessment objectives. So again, here in your booklet, you will find that pages 6 to 8 will give you exemplars of this. And remember that each part of the question has got a different objective. So each part of the question will have different marks given to them and how they are marked as well. So a little bit about the assessment objectives. We'll look at it furthermore when we are doing module 2, but just to get you into it for now. In terms of AO1, which is question A and B, these questions mainly focus on knowledge of relevant facts from faith and history of Islam. You can find an example of this on page 6 of the sample assessment material. And question C, which is focusing on AO2. This is understanding key concepts and themes in relation to Islam, history and teachings of Islam. So again, an example is there on page 7 of the sample assessment material. In terms of the D questions, the focus is on AO3. Now, AO3 is where the highest marks are coming. This is where the analysis are happening and interpreting of key questions and issues that are significant in the teachings of Islam and the lives of Muslims. An example of this, again, is on page 8 of the sample assessment material, which is a document that you have been provided with. In a minute, I'll show you some kinds of responses and how we can actually mark those as well, okay? So demands of the question paper. So marking models. There are points based for questions A and B questions. So very quickly, point based, students will be marked accordingly, whilst for C and D, they are level based. And again, this is in the sample assessment material, which is on page 33 to 35. I will share with you in a minute to show you how this works as well. So in terms of points back, a mark is awarded for each correct response, and depending on the maximum allowed per question, the students are awarded accordingly if they have responded. In level-based, there's a best fit approach. So this means that in this case here, students can actually access the higher levels when they're meeting the requirements. But sometimes what happens is that if they focus on only particular sections of it, then they're actually then not showing significant ability to move with other demands. So I'll just stop sharing this document, this PowerPoint, so that I can open the sample assessment material and show you where these are actually. Should be able to see the sample assessment material now on screen. So if I move on to pages 33 to 35, now here you can see in terms of point-based questions. So for example, question 1A was asking for 2 teachings of the Prophet in respecting mothers. Samplers are given here for the examiner, and obviously they can also accept any appropriate responses. The mark that can be awarded is 2 marks. So if a student responds with 2 good teachings that are identified immediately gets the 2 marks. If they do more than 2, they can't get a 3, they will just get 2 only. So the first 2 or the best 2 will be marked accordingly. In question B, again, this is the points based. This is where an award of 1 mark is given for the initial point, and then further 2 marks for developing the same point. So students have to develop the same point, and the maximum mark that can be given here is 3 marks. So the question was, describe the conversation between Angel Jibreel and Prophet in the cave of Hira. Again, there are exemplar responses given here for teachers to also look in the classroom and discuss with students. If you are maybe giving this question as homework for them, you can show them these could be some responses that you can use and then train them accordingly. For the examiner, these are indicative responses. Again, they can accept any other appropriate response as well. Now, in terms of the C question and the D questions, which have the best levels fitted in. So, for example, here, explain how Khadija helped to support the work of Prophet. We see that a best fit approach is where an answer matches different aspects of the mark bands at different levels. So here you can see the C question has 3 levels. Within each level, there are 2 marks. Mark will be the one that reflects most fairly the balance of attainment against the mark band. And with all references, again, remember, we'll work on this again in module 2, but just very quickly to show you that if the student is actually giving limited facts, they will end up in level 1. If there's good use, there's level 2, and excellent, obviously they move on to the higher band. And the D question, which is again the level based, and this is where a lot of analysis needs to happen. So for example, this question was, assess the importance to Muslims of the belief in Prophet Muhammad as the seal of the prophets. So here you can see indicative content for the examiner, which you can also use in the classroom as well. In terms of the level marking, so where C was up to 6 marks, D is up to 12 marks. So within each level, there are 4 marks. Again, we start off with the first 4 marks being limited, and then level 2 being good understanding. They're applying some views, they're considering, they're putting some kind of information which is relevant, application of analysis may be happening. Level 3 is where students has actually interpreted the information in an excellent manner. They've used the text really well, and they've actually given a two-sided conversation happening within the script as well. Okay, and the text, again, remember, will be in Arabic and also translated in English. So there will be no demand on the student to actually translate it themselves. It's already given to them. All they need to do is to ensure that they're actually using it within their responses. So I'll stop sharing this document and I'll go back to the PowerPoint. In the meantime, please do let me know. Okay, so we've looked at how the mark scheme works here, and I've shared with you where you can actually find the material then. So we move on to the next slide. Teaching the specification. So having looked at how the assessment actually works, let's look at how you can actually teach the specification so that you're supporting your students even further. So the first thing here is in terms of the challenge and skills that's required, each section of the specification, each topic within the section is the same. So in that sense, the order of teaching does not matter. So you can either start off by looking at the Muslim life first and then move on to the community during the time of the Prophet and then move on to looking at the Prophet himself. Or you can start off with section A where you look at the Prophet and then you look at the community at the time and then move on to looking at Muslims today, or whichever way you deliver, it doesn't matter. The demand is really the same. However, what you can see is that best way to go forward is that if you're teaching it in 2 years, then the first year can actually focus on sections A and part of section B, so that you are actually providing foundations for the students to actually understand what is happening, what happened, how did Islam get to where it is now. And then in the second year, perhaps you can then move to looking at the Muslim life, and which will actually benefit the students even further. See, a question has come up. Let me see if there's something relevant. Right. So in terms of linking the text, I think this is something that if you look at the question, and then perhaps you can see how the text might be linked. So Risala passage. So in terms of Prophet Ibrahim, and you can also look at the question that might be there. So is it actually talking about what was given to Prophet Ibrahim, or what messages did Prophet Ibrahim bring to the people? What were the challenges maybe at that point? Again, you have to look at the question that comes. So rather than independently looking at the passage itself, you link it to what question might be coming up. Role of early leaders. Okay, so again, if you're talking about role and battles, again, one thing is you've got to understand they're all different sections that are coming together. Again, the specification then ties up itself. And by all means, you can set up your own WhatsApp group later on after today. There will be some time for you to actually exchange contacts, and you can have sharing of resources or any support that you might give to each other. Yeah. So I hope I've responded to Abu Bakr's question and to Amna's question. Thank you. Right, we'll move on then. So, in terms of demands from one section to another, we've discussed how the demands could be and how you can actually teach it in terms of the content as well. Let's move on further in how you can actually bring knowledge and understanding to the students in your teaching. So in terms of teaching, this is very important because, first of all, knowledge and understanding questions can only be asked about what is actually within the specification. Nothing beyond will be going. So you don't need to teach beyond the specification to respond to all the questions. So I think, Amna, this could also help you here as well, because how much depth, sorry, Shuaib, who had actually asked earlier about the depth of things, how further you should go. So, for example, 1.8 refers to the battles fought by the Prophet. So four battles are named. No question will be asked specifically that for a battle that is not named. So it will be only battles that are named. What might happen is that there could be a general question asked about why are battles important? What is the necessity of it? But student will not need to demonstrate knowledge of understanding of any other battle apart from the four that are named on the specification. For, another example could be the nature of belief in Allah. So Allah is held to have many characters. We know that there are 99 names of Allah. Each of them are responding to his characteristics, but only four have been named here. So for example, Allah's power, his quwwah, Allah as a creator, Allah as a khaliq, Allah is merciful, Allah is just, so Rahman and Rahim. So only four of these have been brought into the specification. So again, once again, specific question could refer to one or more of these four, and a general question could be asked about the importance of Allah's characteristics. And candidates can then mention within the responses what knowledge and understanding they have of these four that they have studied within the classroom. So that would be sufficient for them to access the marks that are relevant accordingly. Okay. Moving on to teaching the specification in terms of evaluation skills. So here, evaluation in the specification involves showing ability to discuss a question from more than one point of view. So let's look at one example. One example could be considering Sawm, fasting. On the one hand, Islam says fasting is an aid to spiritual discipline and it shows the obedience to the command of Allah. It helps Muslims better understand the life of those who are less fortunate to them. So this is on one hand. On the other hand, it is not a good thing to do for people in poor health, so people who might be exempted from it. Allah wants fasting to be a spiritual aid, not a burden. So very people who might be very poor, who might be actually living with constant hunger, and for them this is a necessity every day, and the life is always a fast, so that maybe don't need to do anymore. So this is just again a consideration, other side of the coin. So we are looking at developing. What you could do is within the classroom, you can create a discussion or a debate that are there, and for your students to actually consider the considered for and against about fasting. So after you have had a debate with your students, you can then ask them to write a short essay. So what I've just given an example of can be used within the classroom for students to actually write an essay. So important point here is that candidates are not being asked to argue against Islamic beliefs and teaching, but rather showing that it can be understood from different perspectives. So again, even the belief that Allah is all-powerful is a topic that can be discussed without undermining the key belief of Allah. So for example, by saying that Allah's mighty power means that there's only one God, would again be only for focusing on Allah's power, because in Islam, the power of Allah is also expressed through his compassion and justice. So I think there was a question here, somebody. Okay, so in terms of the qualities of Allah that were there, we are talking about Allah's power, so is Quwwa, and Allah is Khalik as the creator, Allah being merciful and just, so Rahman and Rahim, which we are using every day in our salah as well, or even before doing anything, if we are in the habit of saying Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Yeah. Right. Again, in terms of the battle, there are 4 battles that are given in the specification. So have a look at those 4 battles and work with those, and how do they link in with whatever topics that are discussed within that section. Right. So remember, at any point, students are not being asked to deny what is happening in Islam. It is about giving the other side of the coin, which an example again we've given is using Psalm, and you're preparing your students to actually evaluate and to be able to debate within discussions. Okay. Right. Okay. Battles. Can I come back to the battles later on, please, Amna? Thank you. Right. So we'll move on now for now, and then I'll come back to Amna's question later on. So teaching to the specification, linking in text, this is the key thing. In each topic on the specification, there's a text link to it, either from the Quran or the Hadith. So I know some of you have already started questioning about the text. Look at the topic that's there and try and see how it could be linked in. There might be an intertwined message that might be coming through that. So if a part D question is asked on a topic, the question will include the text in Arabic and English so that students are able to actually access it. And in order to get higher marks, they are expected to integrate an understanding of the significance of the text that is there in front of them. So this is important that students don't need to memorize the text, when you're working with them in the classroom, what you need to actually help them uh, build up is an ability to intertwine the text or link it in the responses. So being able to use the text as a textual reference would be as a skill which is very important for getting higher marks. So that demonstrates how they can get higher marks. Obviously, they can also refer to other texts that they believe are relevant, and these will be credited where appropriate, as long as they are relevant texts, not any text that they feel that they can just put it in, okay? So in terms of linking the text, so you might help your students develop this skill by helping them practice. So in class, you might select one of the topics in the specification. Just look at the text, see how it can link it. There's no need to frame a question at that point. You can do that later on. Make sure students have the text in front of them. So maybe one way you could do is actually photocopy the text, give them the text, use some highlighters, ask them to highlight things that are speaking out to them. How can they actually build that up if somebody is talking about a certain topic? Discuss how the text helps an understanding of the topic and help them make notes around it. So you could actually have the text in front of you, and if you have an interactive board, get the students to come up in front of you, try and link out, write notes across it so that they can actually use it as a resource for revision later on. After you have done that, you can then ask them to write a paragraph where they're actually putting an explanation of the topic, incorporating all those ideas that have been written in front of them. So again, remember the text will be in Arabic and English above the question, and in order to actually integrate the text and explain it within the responses actually amplifies the response to the topic. So they're making their response even more stronger if they're actually integrating the text within itself. So I'd just like to show you the scheme of work so that we can see where we are. I'll just stop sharing this and I'll go to the scheme of work. Now, for the battles, you have Battle of Badr, Ahad, Khandak, which is the trench, and Khaybar. So these are the 4 battles that would be brought into the question. So these are the 4 battles that you'll be working with. And in terms of Allah's attributes, here you can see in 2.1 the omnipotence, and Allah is a creator, Allah is merciful and just. If you look at the names of the holy books, again, these are there in front of you. And then if we move on, you can see the angels that are named here, Jibrail, Mikael, Israfil, Israel. And then if you look at from the point of view of Sharia, you can see the terms that are important for students to be familiar with. Fard meaning compulsory, recommended, mandub, mubah, makruh, and haram. And it's important to sort of help the students understand these terminologies really well so that they're actually able to respond to them accordingly. And then if we look at section C, you can see all those topics there and different sections to it. Just going to the passages. Right, so let's look at the passages here. So for example, in topic 1.1, the personal aspects of the Prophet's life. What we see in front of us is the passage from Surah 66, 66 verses 1 to 3, and it's talking about Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu lima tuharrimu ma uhilla Allahu laka. And what you can do in the classroom is bring the text in front of them. Maybe you can ask them to highlight things here. What does this text tell you? So the first thing that you can see is Prophet has been given a command from Allah. So God is talking to the Prophet here, or Prophet. And then Allah is then asking, why do you prohibit yourself from what Allah has made lawful for you? So when we talk about lawful, here you can start discussions of what does the word lawful mean? What do we mean by things that are lawful? How can we interpret it within the Prophet's life? Again, here it talks about Allah is forgiving and merciful. So Allah's characters, what do we mean by Allah is forgiving? What do we mean by merciful? Now remember, we have merciful as one of the topics that is discussed within the characteristics of Allah. So you can start discussion about what do we mean by merciful. Allah has already ordained for you Muslims the dissolution of your oaths, and Allah is your protector. Students can talk about what does Allah being the protector mean to the Prophet. How is Allah going to protect the Prophet? In what ways? He is knowing. So what does Allah know? How does he know? What does he know about the Prophet? And then the Prophet confided to one of his wives, and again, you can see a conversation happening here. And within this conversation, you can see a lot of things can be brought forward. And here, yes, so what you are saying here is that if the Prophet prohibited himself from something which has been made halal from him, for him, then that would mean a message for everybody else as well. So therefore, the Prophet has to move forward with whatever things that are halal for him. Therefore, the Ummah can then actually pick up on that. So remember, Prophet becoming the role model. And again, here, yes, you're talking about the supreme authority of Allah. So Allah has the authority. He is within his character of knowing. He can see, he can know everything. So this is one passage that you could use within the classroom. Another passage that you could use, for example, is the revelation of the Quran, where we have Suratul Qadr, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Inna anzalnahu fi laylatul qadr, wa ma adraka ma laylatul qadr. ليلة القدر خير من ألف شهر تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر. So here you can see the first thing that's happening is that Allah is saying that He sent the Quran down during the night of decree. So questions could be, how did Allah send down the Quran? What does the night of decree mean? And the next text itself is talking about what is the night of decree, and then the explanation of how the night of decree is better than 1,000 months. So you can ask students to think about what does 1,000 months mean in our human space? What does it mean? And the angels are descending with the permission of their Lord for every matter. So here you can see how the angels and the spirits are also under Allah, how they actually take permission from Allah to be able to come forward. What is happening till the end of dawn? There is peace. So what does this peace mean? What does it mean for us in terms of today as well? So if you are relating to the revelation of Quran, how does it affect people at this point? So look at the topics that are there, try and bring it in accordingly, link it in. 1.3, again, you can see another text there. I'm not going to go on to each text, but just for the purpose of you being familiar with the text and how you could actually use it in the classroom, here is a suggestion as well. So let's see another text from section 2. So section 2, or rather section B, the nature of Allah. So where we are talking about the 4 qualities that are there of Allah at this point. So here you can see Surah Qul Wallah in front of you. So Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. So straight away you can see that there is a discussion of God being one. What do we mean by God being one? How can we actually talk about this understanding? And he has no children, he has no parents. So break it down into the language of the children. So begets and no born. So we try and help them understand that. And no one equal to him. So remember, when you are talking about the nature of Allah, and when you bring in the 4 named characteristics, we are talking about Allah's power. So his power is such that he did not need a set of parents to be able to be there, nor does he need to have a family. If you're looking at Allah as the creator, what you can see that there's no one equal to him, and no one can create the way Allah has created everything. Mercy and just, we are talking about Allah being merciful. So he is the one who is perfect. So he's samad. He has eternal refuge. So there's nothing that is going to go beyond Allah. He is able to provide his mercy where needed, and he is just in providing human beings whatever justification is necessary for them. So there's different discussions you can do accordingly to this. Okay. Right. I'm just going to look at, right. No more comments at this point. Okay. Yeah. So if we look at the Risala, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِمْتُمْ حَرِيصٌ عَلَيْكُمْ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَءُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. What you can do in the classroom as well, this can be an exercise for students to actually read out the text, and then another student might then pick up the text and see what they've understood from there, looking at the English words, see if they can actually pick up words from there. So very quickly you can see the word Rasul. So messenger, what does a messenger mean? Why does a messenger bring something? So messenger brings messages from Allah at this point. So just like you'd have a messenger from somewhere, if we are talking about today's world, we have a messenger from WhatsApp as a messenger for us. Earlier, somebody was asking about a WhatsApp group. That could be a messenger for you in your modern world today, so that you can pass messages on. But here, when we talk about Islam, we see the Risala as a way of getting messages to human beings so that Islam can continue. And in terms of the next text, where it talks about if they turn away, O Muhammad, say, sufficient for me is Allah. There's no deity except him. So here again, it's talking about Allah being the one that is appropriate for Muslims. There's no one beyond that. So for Muslims, the concept of one Allah and following the Risala and the actions that are being provided through that. Again, we then move on to, let's choose another one. So we might look at Islamic etiquettes, attitude and manners. Here you can see Surah 49, verses 11 to 13. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu la yaskharu qawmun min qawmin asa. Here you can see Allah is telling, "O who have believed, let not a people ridicule another people." So what does that mean? How does that relate to society? Perhaps they may be better than them. No, let women ridicule other women. Again, the verse goes on talking about insulting. So insulting or calling nicknames to each other. Again, being negative, avoid much negative assumptions. So again, there's a lot of discussion on being negative all the time. You could bring that into the classrooms, so Islamic attitude and manners, because in today's world, there is a real norm about having negative attitudes. You can see what the Quran is talking about here. So backbiting on each other. What does that mean? How does it break up relationships? How can that break up a family? What can happen because of that? Again, here, this last section of the verse is talking about created from male and female, so that you know each other. What does that mean? How can we know each other? And Allah is the righteous of you. He's all-knowing and acquainted. Again, here they can relate to the qualities of Allah as well here. In terms of people knowing each other, they've been brought into tribes. What does that mean? Etiquette. So, for example, this could also be linked to the section where they could talk about for example, they could talk about marriages and how people know each other. So in terms of linking to Prophet Ibrahim, again, here you could say that the message that Prophet Ibrahim brought was about one Allah, Allah being the righteous, He's all-knowing, acquainted. So bringing the core messages of Allah. So if you look at the etiquettes that are there, the similar etiquettes would have been brought by previous prophets as well. So they would also have taught the people at the time not to ridicule each other, not to be negative towards each other. So find different concepts or different ways that you can link in through that. So if you're talking about particular prophets, you want to maybe look at their history very quickly and see how the people were at that time. So here you can see in the second section, "O you who have believed." Indeed, some assumption is seen. So negative assumptions, spying, backbiting. During the time of Prophet Ibrahim as well, there was a lot of tensions in terms of how people were negative. So look at how this can be brought in. What negativity was happening at that time? How was Islam seen in a negative way? So again, as I said, these texts have been chosen by people who are proficient in Quranic studies, and they have actually chosen the text. And again, if you want to find a direct link as well in terms of the Prophet himself, yes, it's directly related to the Prophet, but there are some sections in it which you could use for the time of Prophet Ibrahim as well. Yeah, so I hope that helps you, Amna. Shukriya. Okay, take care. Okay, so for these children, remember, because they are not studying at real depth, we are doing just very surface level. So your task within the classroom obviously is even harder because you are coming from a perspective where you are looking at tafsir and you are bringing depth of meaning. For these 16-year-olds, you just want them to sort of pick up words that would speak to the question. So what we did right now is we just picked up words that are related to the topic. You can actually do all the subtopics, keep on using the same text that's there for them until the text is actually part of them. So what I'm not saying is that actually start doing heaps of the text. We don't want that to happen. What we want them to understand is actually talk to the text when they are writing the responses. Okay? Is that any better, Amna? Yes, perfect. Yeah, so this is what it is actually. And I think what the key message here is that as teachers, as soon as you start drumming into them that you really need to use these words in your response, but obviously when they're using those words, they don't just say, for example, oh, Allah is mighty, therefore he can take away people's lives, and then just put a word, oh, it's obligatory to listen to people. No, he or she needs to actually link it up. What does it mean? It's obligatory to listen to Allah because he is the wise and all-knowing. Do you see what I've just done there? I picked up words from the text, or I can say, as the text in front of me says, that it's obligatory for one to listen and obey the rules of Allah because Allah is the one who will take away life, or something like that. I've just paraphrased things here. So it's trying to paraphrase, trying to put text in together so that the examiner can see that this student is actually engaging with the text. So the more engagement they do, the better their response becomes. So let's take up a text here that might actually help us go even further. Right, here, the nature of Allah, okay? So here it's talking about God is one, and question might be, I'm not saying this is a question, but just a quick example. Discuss Allah's mercy. So discuss Allah's mercy and use the text provided. So student can start talking about how Allah can be merciful, what kinds of mercy is brought. And when we link in the text, the student can actually say, there is no one who is equal to Allah, because it is the way Allah is. He is perfect. He was born without parents. He doesn't have children. And his mercy is such that he will not leave human beings alone. He's going to be merciful to them on the day of judgment. So again, this is just an example. It's not a question. So bear in mind, just showing you how to use the text. And then remember, the student has to bring the analysis with showing the different viewpoint. So here we are not saying that they have to deny Allah's mercy. What they can actually bring is another point. So on the other side, Allah's mercy is such that somebody who is not able to fast due to a number of reasons, health reasons, or because of fasting, their health is going to deteriorate. Allah is not going to held that person accountable for the fast that he or she has missed. So do you see what we've done? We've talked about Allah's mercy, how he is going to be merciful for everybody because there's nobody who is equal to Allah. He's the only one, and he is the one who is going to be looking onto being mercy towards people. On the other side, we've also said Allah is merciful. He's not just going to punish somebody who hasn't fasted because of ill health. Does that help, Amna? Amna? Thank you. Right. Okay. So, Rasima, I see you picked up the example as well. So thank you. So it's just trying to sort of bring such kinds of examples into the classroom. And as teachers, you are able to do it. What you need to understand is that these are 16-year-olds. And as I said, English may not be their first language. For many of them, they might be struggling in terms of understanding some of the words on the text itself. So break down those words like begets. What does begets mean? So you can start by helping them understand that each of us here needed parents to come into the world. Allah did not need that. So he never needed parents to be able to be there. And nor does he need children. So he doesn't beget, he doesn't have children, nor was he born. So he wasn't born out of parents. Each of us needed parents to be born, and you as children are children of your parents. So things like that, so that students can actually talk to the text. I hope that is useful to you. I'm just going to remove myself on video so I can change the PowerPoint. And then later on, as I said, I will share with you that link and we can look at the link as well. So let's move on further with the PowerPoint. Okay. So I hope that was a useful discussion and everybody benefited from what we've just discussed here. So moving on to the next slide, where again, here, this is a really good example here where you can link a text. So the example given here is in a question on the revelation of the Quran to Prophet Muhammad, students might add something like this to their response. So remember, the question might be revelation of the Quran to Prophet Muhammad, and how can they actually relate to? So here the student might use, in the assigned text, it said that the night of decree is better than 1,000 months. This explains that Muslims have no doubt of the central importance of the Quran in their lives. It is the principal source of instruction about what Muslims believe and how they should behave. The text goes on to speak of peace. So do you see how the uh, text has been broken down here? This can be understood to mean that it is by honoring the Quran that Muslims can achieve peace in their hearts and in their lives. Okay, so there's a T missing there, so it's hearts and lives. So this is a perfect example for you to use in the classroom as well. And show the students, look how this text is speaking to the question. So the question is Quran to the Prophet. So paraphrase the question, discuss the revelation of the Quran to the Prophet. So students have to discuss that, make sure you are linking in the text, and the text would be Suratul Qadr. Here you can see how the response is actually using that. So better than 1,000 months, and showing that that night is very important for Muslims. And because of that, Muslims should believe on it, and it's actually showing them how they should behave. If you talk about peace, we are talking about Muslims can actually achieve peace as soon as they start honoring the Quran, and they can actually achieve peace in their hearts and their lives. So what do we mean by honoring the Quran? Actually practicing the Quran as we live in our daily lives. So for example, there are some etiquettes in the Quran that as Muslims we need to follow. There are some actions in the Quran as Muslims we need to follow. For example, in school, uh, I used to say to because where I am, we have winter time, shorter days, and by the time I'd get home, my Zohar and Asr prayers would get qaza. So what I'd do is I'd use my lunch time to actually recite my Zohar and Asr namaz. So I'd tell them it's my me time. So when I mean my me time, it's my time to talk to Allah. So here what we can see is that I'm honoring what the Quran is saying, that offering your prayers, and here I can achieve the peace in my heart, and my life is lived accordingly. So we are not looking for generic responses. This paragraph only provides examples of kinds of things that can be said. So this example is to show what kind of use of the text within the specification is indicating. The content will always depend on the actual question. So just like I very quickly made a question there, it's just a fake question. It's not a question that's going to appear anywhere. So don't take it as a future predicted question. It's just a way of helping you teach in the classroom. So let me just go on to the website. But before I go there, are there any further questions in terms of how to link the text? Is everyone clear with that? Can I have a yes or a no, please, on chat so that I can proceed? Okay, thank you, Rosima. Thank you. Right, so I'll just stop sharing this and I'll bring the link in so that we can actually see the materials that I was talking about. My PowerPoint. Okay, so very quickly, if I can have a yes or no, if you can see the screen which shows Islamic Studies 2017. Somebody please type into chat. Thank you. Thank you, Rosima. Thank you, Baba. Okay, so if you go onto this link, I am just going to put it onto the chat as well. I'll put the link onto the chat in a minute. And link there so that you can use it later on in your own time as well. So 2017, as you see, the specification actually changed and new material was given up as well. So if you open up each of the tabs, you will find there's a lot that can support you in teaching. So the first one is exemplars. So you have some exemplars here, which you can show to your students in terms of responding. This is based on June 2019. So let's see that one. Here, you can see how we were talking about the Night of Power. Some exemplars here, so you can share with your students. These are some of the responses that have been given, and they're being shared here. Use them in the classroom. Get students to work with them. Use highlighters, and this response is actually given 4 marks, and the comments are also here why this actually achieved 4 marks. So use it for your students as an activity. So one kind of activity you could do is actually photocopy this, ask them to work in a group or pairs, use different highlighters, let them highlight words that are making sense to them. What does it mean? Let them write notes across it. And then you can actually show them how the answer could have been strengthened even further. So this way they're actually seeing what they can do as well further with that response. So just need to bring this document. Okay. Just need to bring this. Go back to the document and I'll show you something else there. Uh, Here you have the SAMS exemplars again, which you have in front of you already, the SAMS. You have the guide here. So getting started guide. If you haven't come across this guide, I'd really suggest you look at this guide because it will help you how to actually walk through and teach your lessons as well. It's a very in-depth guide, and you can see some exemplars given here as well. And again, use them in your classroom. Plan your lessons accordingly. So everything is there in terms of preparing your material. You just have to engage with these different documents. So it's a big document, but then take your time, look at it, and see how you can use it to make worksheets for your students as well. And later on, when you exchange context, one thing that you can do is if somebody is preparing a resource, share it around. And once you share it around, somebody could even develop it even further. And that can be used even more for the students. Okay. So if I go back here, you have lesson material. So here you have a tracker for the students to see where they are. So this can be a handbook for the students in terms of looking where they are in their learning. You then give the honors to the students to actually uh, code themselves where they are in their learning. So for example, here, personal aspects of the Prophet's life. I have learned the topic. I know the topic. I can analyze the Quran passage. So they can tick, and they can say where they are, whether they are in red, green, or amber. At the end of it, have they done an exam question? For example, opposition and hijrah, boycott of hijrah. Again, same thing. Have they learned the topic? Do they know the topic? Can they analyze the Quran passage? So, Amna, this could be a really good exercise for you in the classroom as well. You you can then keep, each of you can actually give the students their booklet after each lesson, or maybe after the topic has finished, so that they can actually see where they are in their learning journey. If you look at the second B section, it's also there as well. And Muslims in today's life, again, it's all there. Okay, right. So if we move on to here, you'll find an activity. So it's an activity that can be used in the classroom. So these activities are all linked in with this one here. So there's a scheme of work. If you haven't come across this, I really suggest you download this, and it will really help you move further in your classroom, because there are actually lesson plans suggested there. So for example, here, I'm just going to go very quickly here. You can see each theme, each section has been divided. There are exemplar teaching activities there for you. So questions that can be brought for them. So for example, if you're teaching about the life of Prophet's life, one one question you could talk or discuss about event that happened was during the year of the elephant. How was this significant? What can be learned from this pre-birth event? What was the society like? Again, discussion, what are the suggested things that could happen? You could discuss specific teachings about respect for mothers and parents, so linking it to society. So again, remember the society before Prophet's teachings, women did not play a good place there, but when the Prophet brought his teachings through, women had a really good place. So the role of mother was actually highlighted. And you have some extension tasks here. Turn it into a short report where students are asked to present in front of their peers. So get them into the habit of writing and talking to each other, explaining. So once you get them to talking and then to writing, then build them into the exam question. Again, here you can see what are the skills that they're building through all this. So the skills of analysis, understanding. Obviously, they need the knowledge and understanding of something before they can actually analyze. So all these are really important. And you can use a question. So it's hyperlinked for you. So use question 1C to actually move forward with this topic. Again, these are all guidance for you. So there's a lot of things that are happening in this booklet. There's also some links to YouTube videos. Um, some of these links maybe might not be dominant in terms of they might have moved, but obviously what you can do is just pick up some words from here and search on YouTube. You will get them all there. So this is, or if you actually have the video copy of the message, that is a really good film to use, and you can divide that into parts. I think some of the things that students really enjoy is not to just sit there and to listen to things, but to engage with creative tasks as well. So you can get them to look at the film in different parts, and then they can review what they've written and maybe respond to a question that you might bring up at that point. Again, here, if you look at revelation of the Quran, what you'll find in this document is the document is actually guiding you number of hours you can use to teach as well, this particular section. Yes, I'll do that, Rasim, in a minute. And again, here, you can see the student tracker is being used here. So use that. These are all different techniques for you to support your students and move forward with them. And if we move on to Hijra, you can see students to reflect on how this might impact on the Prophet's mission and the lives of the followers, to let them write out conversation bubbles in their books. So they can pretend to write out some words from the followers in bubbles. And this way, they're actually engaging with what's happening with the migration as well. Again, questions that you could use to bring more explanation within the classroom. These are questions that you could use. And things for them to reflect is how did the boycott impact on the mission of the Prophet? So the boycott on Muslims, how did it actually impact on the mission? They could write a condolence message to show how they would have supported the Prophet if they were there at that time. So making them think. So that way it's becoming an engaging task for them, and also they're learning through that. I'm just conscious of time, but I'm trying to bring in as much as possible so that you're really, really ready after today to get into this specification and teach them. And I'm sure your students will see as well how you've got different tools with you for teaching. So here, again, different question here. If we move on, there are areas where you can actually use those different um, these lesson materials, these different lesson materials that are there. For example, this hexagon. Just let it load up. I think I've got too many tabs on. So this can be used again for them to write things on, and then they can perhaps cut the hexagons and develop further around it, write responses on that. Or what you can do is you can get this printed, write down parts of a response that you've seen, an example, let them see if they can bring it up back into the correct manner it was. So different techniques that you can use. One more, which is the outer circle and inner circle. So here you could use this as a way of teaching about Hijrah. You could have the life of the Prophet here, what's happening after Hijrah, and how is it impacting people on the outside here. So again, different ways. You just use these different resources that are there to support you and sort of move forward with the students. So hope this link is useful to you, and past training contents are also there as well. So you can see all these later on. Some of them are zipped documents, but you can always have a look at it in your own time. So from Pearson, you can get this skills for mapping Islamic studies. And what are the transferable skills from here? All that is part of there, okay? So I must just close all these tabs so that I can bring my PowerPoint back. Any questions whilst I'm doing this, please? Right, I'll stop sharing this. Yes, so when it opens as empty document, hexagon, and other activities, that those are actually linked in with the scheme of work. Somewhere in the scheme of work here, you will find there will be an activity where you can use the hexagon. Okay, so I can't have a look at it now, but I'm sure when you are reading it later on, you will find somewhere where you can actually use the hexagon as an activity for the students to work on. And again, in terms of the tracker, it's hyperlinked, but with those other things which are there, you can use it yourself in other topics. So for example, the hexagon, as I said, can be used to show the life of the Prophet during migration and what happened. So different sections can be put in front of them. Okay, I hope that's clear, Baba. Thank you. Okay, so I think I've already shared this one with you. So quite a lot I've shared with you here. I'll just close this now. So as long as you can look at this scheme of work, and then you'll be able to link in all those other activities together with it, okay? So keep this link handy with you wherever you are, on whatever computer you are. Maybe you can bookmark the link, and that way it's always there in front of you. So when you're preparing your lessons, you can actually look at all those different links that are there. Okay. Right. Any questions whilst I'm bringing up my PowerPoint? Right, as usual, Antoinette is there to support us, so thank you very much for that, Antoinette. Right, I cannot see any questions here, so what I'll do now is try and bring everything to a closure. So what we have done today is we have actually, I'll go back to my first slide of objectives where we can actually see what our objective was and how we have achieved it. So we have identified the qualification in terms of the documentation. We have looked at the content of the qualification. We've explored how to plan the course or lessons. We've looked at the assessment and how to prepare students. And now I'm going to finally give you the support that's also available from Pearson. I've already showed you the website which is there for support for you, but towards the end, there's more even that you can do to be supported as well. So I just quickly need to forward the slides to be able to move to that. So there is support for you at every stage. Remember the getting started guide that I've just shown you. You have the training events, you have subject advisor support, for exam preparation, teaching, and also results as well. You have community forums, so there might be forums on there that you can use. There's a scheme of work available, which I've actually shared with you today as well. There's skills mapping, which I have highlighted to you, but you can open it in your own time. The sample assessment materials, which I've shown you, we've discussed through it. It actually supports you in exam preparation assessment as well. You have the examiner report. So for example, I showed you a question and where a student had got 4 marks and how the examiner had commented on why, but there's more reports that you can look at later on as well. Marked responses, we've shown you one. You have past papers that you can use, the exam wizard, mark schemes that are there, and all those different um, resources and supports that you can use from Pearson. On this slide, I'd just like to highlight to you that number of resources that are available, which I've actually shown you the website as well. So you'll find there's also exam material as well. These include past papers. Remember, this specification is from 2017. So there's a lot of past papers that are available for you to use within the classroom, together with mark schemes and examiner reports. You also have forms and administration documents to help you with admin. I'm not sure in your schools whether you do the admin or whether you have exam officer. It's entirely within your school format. And then course planner, which I've shown you already, and other activities that can help you in teaching. So in terms of adding to the bank, the exam happens once a year. So usually during summertime, the exam happens, and then summertime in the UK, examiners are busy marking the papers. So remember, this is a 2-year course, so you've got a lot of strength to build with your students. So you might find that the students' understanding in the first year will be slightly different to how they understand it by the time they reach to the second year. Okay. So support for exam preparation. This is a tool that you may find useful in analyzing your students and your own teaching performance. You can see in depth by using Results Plus the performance of a candidate or your class or school in reference to the cohort that you have. You can also see which questions and specific points students have performed well and very poorly in, and use this in their choices around revision. So if you see what has really worked well for your students, you might use that better in your classroom for your next cohort, and what didn't really work well where the students really perform badly, you can actually use that as a way to support your students further in your next cohort as well in future classroom teaching. And 4 results plus, again, student takes exam on paper. The exam is actually scanned. So remember, this is a free online service to Pearson Edexcel centers, and it's providing teachers and students with a deep insight into exam performance. So this Results Plus was actually developed in 2007 when the principal examiner looked at how it could modernize exam marking process and brought over ePen, which is a technology from the US. So here what you see is students take their exam, and I'm sure you can see when you have exam time, you must be seeing your students in wherever area they are doing their exams. They are busy sitting, writing their responses. Those papers are then sent to a central processing center and are scanned through a series of clever machines. So this scanning happens. And then electronic copies are sent to examiners. And this allows particular questions from the same paper to be sent to different examiners depending on their expertise. And they are marked on screen digitally. And then this is all consolidated, reach digital data into a central system, and performance reports are then shared accordingly. Exam Wizard. This is a tool that you as teachers may find useful in producing exercises and past papers for students to use for study or in the classroom. So you can very quickly make up homework assignments for them, or topic tests, or mock exams. The questions from past papers will be really helpful. This is a bank of potential questions to produce bespoke questions depending on what test you're selecting. You can either use it as unit or topic, or choose a whole past paper and use mark schemes for accurate marking. You can see the examiner report for insight as well. And then most recent content will be available very soon as well. This will not be available to the students, but be available to you, which you can use as a mock exam. And results to understand where students need more support will sort of inform you in terms of your teaching strategies and where to move forward as well. Okay. This is an online portal where you can instantly, from results day onwards, you can have a look at it. And this service allows you to see all your students' marked exam papers free of charge. When you see them, it is available through Edexcel online, and the scripts will not have examiner annotation on them. Pearson is the only awarding body that is giving this free of charge. So you can use this access to strips alongside Results Plus, and this will give you a detailed breakdown and understand exactly how your cohort has done in their exams. You have a subject advisor, and he is available at all times. This is his email, and that's his phone number. So I'm sure if you are on Twitter, you can also tweet to him as well. In terms of a WhatsApp group, people who are within the same areas, this is a time for you to share your contacts or emails with each other. So I'll just put up a screen which is about questions. Any questions, please very quickly put them through. I'm very much aware of time. We've got under 7 minutes left, and I know as teachers, you have a busy time. I don't know what time it is at wherever you are, whether in Pakistan, Egypt, or UAE, but here at the moment, it's nearly 11 o'clock in the UK. Subject advisor contact, yeah, 2:53 in Pakistan. So you're nearly to the end of your teaching day, hopefully. Thank you, Amna. So this is the subject advisor email, and his phone number is there. But obviously, if you want to tweet out to him as well, you can do through Pearson as well. Anybody who wants Shuaib's number, Shoaib has shared his number, and Shoaib, you can be the initiator in Pakistan. You can set up the WhatsApp group, and then people can join in, and this could be a group for people to actually share their resources and expertise as well. So, um, uh, thank you, Amna. I'm glad you've learned quite a lot. Uh, Great. So Shuaib is then going to set up this WhatsApp group. You've already got Amna's number here. So Amna can be added in, and Babar's number is already there. So this is a WhatsApp group which will not be monitored by Pearson. This is your own independent group where you can share resources, use the work that is there out there for you already, and see how you can actually support each other. Or you can even say, this is what I did in my recent classroom and it works. See how it works with you. So remember, this is something that will actually develop each of you as you move forward. So Abu Bakr, you've set up a chat, or is it Shoaib who's setting it up? Okay, I'll leave it amongst yourself, whoever wants to be the person who's actually monitoring it. You could have two people monitoring it, and keep it a chat where you are just okay. Abu Bakr has already met this WhatsApp chat, so Shoaib, your work has been cut down, but I guess Abu Bakr and yourself can be the monitors, as we say, or you can be the two people who are actually looking into what's happening on chat. Okay, so I see that we've got only around 4 minutes left. Any questions, any further comments very quickly before I hand over? Thank you, Rasima. Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, Rasima. Thank you, Abubakar. I hope one day we can meet face to face, but whilst we can't meet face to face, at least we're meeting remotely, and I'm able to uh, facilitate this training to yourselves, and you're able to go more powerful into your classroom, so you've got more tools that you can share in your classroom. So 3 minutes. Oh, thank you, Rasima. If you invite me to Karachi via Pearson, I'm happy to come. Okay, so right now we've got less than 2 minutes left. So I am now going to hand over to Antoinette, and she's going to thank you on behalf of Pearson. Thank you very much for all your comments, and keep safe. Jazakallah fi amanillah. Ahsant.